Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I am UndeadSick83, and this is episode 5 of the Cult Cinema Podcast. And today I will happily be joined by a fellow YouTuber that you see on that side, who makes great content, Sarah of Horror. Sarah, how are you today?
No, I'm good. It's been a very hot day in Sweden, so I've been outside getting some sun and then watching some movies, and yeah, I feel fine.
Okay. Well, you have better weather than we have in Holland because it's been raining all week. So it's which is, apparently in one of the movies that we are going to discuss, it's a sign of impending doom. So, maybe
that is correct.
Maybe that's a good sign for this podcast here. So we'll see. Well, thank you for agreeing to do this with me. I'm very excited to do this podcast with you because we will talk about a director that we are both huge fans of, I guess, Dario Argento.
Yes.
Maestro Dario Argento, I should say. And so before we announce the movies that we are going to talk about, I always ask this. Can you give me and the viewers some info as to what was your first experience with Dario Argento and what was the first movie that you ever saw from his body of work?
Yeah, well, I remember when I was in high school, a long time ago, and a friend actually, she was talking about a film called Suspiria. She was like, well, I know you love horror movies and you like weird horror movies, so you should definitely check out Suspiria. And she had it on a DVD, so she lent it to me and I watched it and I kind of fell in love with the film. And yeah, so that was the first Dario Argento film I saw, and that is also my favorite Dario Argento film, still a favorite movie overall. So yeah, I was hooked from the very beginning, and then I just continued watching all of his movies.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. We'll talk about. We'll get there. But the first movie that I saw was actually not Suspiria.
Okay.
It's very funny. When I was 12, I guess 11, we had we didn't have a lot of TV channels in Holland. I think there were only 3 or something like that. And one of the channels had this tradition of the Saturday and the Sunday, I believe, but mostly the Saturday. And they would spend all day just viewing movies and TV shows, which was like a dream come true for a nerd like me. But and at some point there was a movie and they said the name Dario Argento. And I back then I had no idea about Italian cinema. So what do I know? But I liked the title because it was called Phenomena. And yes. Well, there you go. You already know that one. So, and it had Jennifer Connelly in it, of course, very young Jennifer Connelly, and it looked very interesting. So I decided, why not? Let's watch this. And of course, it was R-rated, but I had my own TV and video recorder, so my parents didn't know. So very sneaky watching it late at night. And it was just so bizarre and really unusual because back then I was kind of used to American films mostly. And I was watching it and I was like, what is this? This is so different and, inventive and stuff. And then later on, of course, I watched more of his movies and then I became a fan. But that was kind of my first experience. It was Phenomena, which is a movie that you don't hear a lot of people talking about in terms of Dario Argento's work, I guess. But I really love Phenomena. So, yeah, that was kind of my first experience. So, if you are ready, we can announce the films that we are going to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. So, today we are going to discuss the first 2 pictures of the Three Mothers trilogy, basically, which is, of course, Suspiria, like you already said, and Inferno, the second one. So I always ask my guests this, but which movie would you like to start with?
We can start with Suspiria.
You want to start in chronological order? Okay. First of all, by the way, I figured since witches are drinking wine, Oops, spoiler there, spoiler. But doesn't matter. The film is like 40 years old already, so it's,
yeah. So if you haven't seen it by now, I mean,
yeah, it's like you're late to the party. Come on, I mean, it's like. But I figured I'm drinking some wine as well. I don't know if you have like a beverage with you or whatever, but
not at the moment. But
okay.
yeah,
Well, if you feel like at some point you want to get something, feel free to go ahead. So
okay. Yeah, I can actually get something just real quickly.
okay, sure. Sure, I'll wait for you to be here.
Yeah.
All right, so. All right.
Oh, and I'm back.
Okay, there you go. What do you drink? What are you having? What do you drink?
Just a kind of lemon and mint soda.
Oh, it's how do you pronounce it again? San
Pellegrino. San Pellegrino. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that one. That's good. Yeah. All right. So, Suspiria, of course, from 1977. That's the year it was released, of course. Before we start, I always give a quick synopsis. So, quick synopsis. A young ballerina travels to Europe in order to study at a dance academy, but instead uncovers a coven of witchy secrets. Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. That's basically what it is. So, sometimes these synopses that you find are so weird. It's like all like they spoil everything in the whole, whatever. But that's basically what it is. So yeah. So Suspiria. A lot of people say that this is Argento's, masterpiece. We'll talk about that when we get to the end of the review. But before we go into the positives, negatives, and stuff, just give me a quick note as to as a movie, what are your general thoughts on Suspiria?
Yeah, I mean, like the first time I watched it, what really drew me in were the colors, just the magnificent use of the red, the blue, the green, all together. It's so emotional. It goes hand in hand with the wonderful music by Goblin, and just the visuals. The visuals are so impactful that, I mean, you will never forget Suspiria once you've seen Suspiria, basically.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And it's funny because Dario Argento did that before, of course, use a lot of colors. But in this movie specifically, the colors almost explode off the screen. I mean, they are so resonant and just apparent in every little bit of it. It's really, it's pretty insane, actually. And but for me, I'm before we dive into it, even to this day, I'm very surprised that Argento made his change from the Giallo film, which he was famous for, into a supernatural sort of genre. I expect that from people like Lucio Fulci or Mario Bava, but not necessarily Argento. So I thought that was a very interesting choice that he made that sort of, change in his career. Did you think that was weird, or did it make sense to you? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, since I started with Suspiria, I didn't really find it that strange. I thought that was his kind of style. But then I, of course, discovered his earlier movies, like Bird with the Crystal Plumage and all of his Giallo movies. And then I just thought it was like a fascinating leap. He just wanted to do something kind of a bit different. So I was like, I could kind of see it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, as a director, you always want to reinvent yourself, I guess. And you are an indie filmmaker. Is that correct? Yes. Yeah. So you probably can relate to that. You always want to reinvent yourself, and things like that. And of course, a big reason why he decided to have that change is because he wrote the script with his then wife Daria Nicolodi, of course. After they traveled Europe and they met, like, what was his name again? Rudolf Steiner, I believe, a famous occultist, and they based some of the essays of Suspiria de Profundis on this film, of course, written by Thomas de Quincey, I believe it was. But his wife was a very big reason why he decided to do this. So it's very interesting. But very funnily, Daria only appears like in the first like chapter is Inferno, of course, the second one. That's only where she appears for the first time in this trilogy. Which I'm like, did he not want to cast her in the main role, or did he feel that was weird? I can't pin that down, but it's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I don't know either. But yeah.
Yeah. So let's go in. Let's just dive into it. Let's go into the positives and negatives. Let's just start with the positives. What are some of the things that you love so much about Suspiria? What is it about this movie that makes it so great for you?
Yeah, well, I think like the best part of it is that it kind of draws me in right from the opening moments. Like even before you even see Jessica Harper or Susie Bannion coming to the airport, you just see the credits and you start hearing that music. You start hearing something, and then you hear the drums, the beats, and then you hear some of the voices, and something just grabs my attention. Like I'm feeling that it's something, I'm gonna see something really special. So that is what I love right from the start. And then of course we see the colors being used right away, the red. We also hear the music. I really like one detail is we see Susie, and then we see these doors opening and closing. So when they open, we kind of hear the Goblin music. And then when they are closed, we don't hear it. So it's like right away. Like if you go outside, something bad will happen. Like right. That is So I really love those details. And of course the heavy rain. But yeah, the uses of this of sound, of the visuals, just everything, and also just Jessica Harper is just so amazing as Susie, like her expressions and everything. So I am just hooked through the entire film by just everything going on in the film, basically.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like once at the airport, and of course the first scene that you see her entering the airport, the colors are all red, and but the sort of the doors, that's kind of like once you're outside, this is like the door and you enter hell, basically.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. And of course then indeed the rain, and just it doesn't rain, it's like a freaking thunderstorm, and it's like just impending, like I said, impending doom. And just, even with, I'll get back to that, but even with like the cab driver, it's almost like you don't know who to trust in this film. Even the cab driver that takes her to the school has this sort of weird look on his face, and it's like he doesn't really understand like the name of the street that she mentions, and does he not know that on purpose?
I had a feeling that he did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the way she pronounces it, you definitely can understand that. Because when he says like, "Oh, Eschestrasse," it feels like, I don't know, that was on purpose. He just wanted to make her feel like worried or bad or confused or something.
Yeah. Exactly. And just to add what you're saying right here is that one of the biggest things for me for this film is that this picture, it has very little plot going on. Let's just be, clear about that. There is not really like a narrative thrust in terms of like a deep sort of story. But it does display something, I feel like, that is missing from most of the modern day horror movies today, and that is atmosphere. And you get atmosphere by the bucket load, and I think that goes a long way, you know. And again, the rainstorm, it's just a metaphor for, all the terrible things that are going to happen. The desolate town square, we'll talk about that, but the desolate town square is just surrounded by darkness.
Yes.
It's like the only like piece of light in that whole town is like that town square. It's so bizarre. And just the glowing eyes of, like, spoiler, Helena Marcos, of course. It just works so extremely well in a very delicious way. And I feel like a lot of people beat down on this film because it doesn't really have a plot. But if you give me so much great atmosphere, I can sort of let that slide,
Yeah, I think Yeah, I've always been like that with Dario Argento movies. Of course, some of his other work has a lot of more developed scripts, but some movies, the plot is pretty thin, and he makes up for it with the visuals, with the atmosphere, with the just impact, as you say, and the great effects, the great scenery, the stunningness of his movies. So for me, I can let that slide. Yeah.
I mean, I can appreciate a deep thematic story as well. I can appreciate a deep cut, but with horror movies, and again, I feel like that's a problem with most horror movies today, is that they don't bring a lot of atmosphere to it, and I feel like that's really like a sort of like a death note for horror. And if you if there's one thing that the Italians are great at, it's creating atmosphere. And I can forgive so many things, just give me great atmosphere, and it's and on top of atmosphere, let's just talk about the gore and the kills in this one, because it's some of the most extreme but also some of the most amazing practical effects that I have seen ever. It's Argento really went above and beyond with this one. You have maggots from rotten food, of course. The scene with the scene with the dog and Daniel in the town square, which is my personal favorite of the whole film. I love that scene. It's fantastic.
Yeah, my personal favorite is definitely the beginning with the double kill. I mean, not a lot of movie opens up as strongly as this movie does. I mean, that was just, the first 15 minutes are just so magical, because when I saw it the first time, I didn't really see that coming. And that beautiful, we got a beautiful shot when the camera pans down on her hanging, and then it kind of goes down, moves to the right, and then we see the other woman, and it's stunning camera work.
Yeah, but even the shock effect as well. It's like, first of all, it's like I was when I watched it for the first time. Again, the shock effect is like, really, that you're starting this early in the movie already, and in some really crazy stuff. I mean, like when let's just say it, Helena Marcos, the stabbing, but then there's one stab in like the heart. You actually see the heart.
It's exposed, and then
it's like, wow, you really went there. And then of course when it pans down, like you said, and you see that her friend is like just eviscerated as well with all of it's so brilliant. It's probably my favorite. Well, double murder, I guess. It's probably my favorite double murder in like any horror movie ever. Because it's just, and again, the colors of just like the building itself.
Yeah, the windows and everything.
It works very, very well. I agree with you. I was going to talk about that, but you beat me to it. So, but yeah, it's such great stuff. It's such great stuff. And again, I think we rarely see anything like this in modern day horror movies at all. So yeah, it's very. But also, I think also the characters are super interesting in this film. Which is so hard to do in any movie at all. But I mean, take Olga for example. I mean, played by Barbara. I always butcher the Italian names, but by Barbara anyway.
Yeah.
But Olga, I mean, can you fall in love with a woman any quicker? I'm kidding. But I mean, I love Olga. She's fantastic. And of course, the main character Susie Banyan is incredible as well. And the reason that for me anyway, that I really love Susie Banyan is because I hate it when in horror movies characters are dumb and idiotic and they make stupid decisions. And what I love about Susie Banyan in this film, it's the way Argento wrote her, of course, but it's because she is a smart character.
Yeah, 'cause, I think, like, for me, she always has this look of that she's thinking things through. She's taking everything in, even if it's really strange, whatever's going on. She's kind of taking it in, like taking a moment to herself, thinking, okay, what do I do here? What can I do? What is going on? And yeah, and then she bases the decisions based upon whatever she she has thought through. But yeah, but everything just feels really thought through with her. Like, it takes a moment, and you can see that in her face.
Yeah, exactly. And also, she doesn't take things on a dime. You know, she really investigates, and she really makes sure that she has all of the facts before she calls it what it is. And it's so yeah, I think that is extremely well written. But also the actual witches in this film. Let's just talk about that. I mean, you know, Pablo, the really creepy, like, ogre guy. So I guess the mute, like, with the teeth and stuff. He gives me the creeps every time I watch this film. It's so, oh my God, it's so creepy. And
yeah, like the first time Susie meets him and Miss Tanner is talking about him, and he just, gives her this big creepy smile. Yeah.
And also when he gives her for the second time, I believe, his her dinner, sort of her tray, and he, like, when he closes the door, he gives a look, and it's a very sinister look, and it's like, oh my God, it's get that guy away from me right there. And but also the kid Albert and the creepy that's always with him. I mean, they give me shivers every time. Like the scene in the hallway where she is sort of like, well, hypnotized with the crystal, I guess.
Yeah, with the shiny thing.
Yeah. And if you look very closely, like, Albert goes from very serious, the kid, and he goes to making this sort of evil smile. And then when the glowing stops, he goes back to normal. It's like, oh my God. It's just it's just you can do so much with very little, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's the power of it, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, and then of course, I mean, we have to talk about, you already mentioned it, but Alida Valli, I believe her name is, as Miss Tanner, of course, the sort of, not the headmistress, but sort of like, she's kind of like the person that runs things, I guess. And she almost has some very dictator-like qualities about her. The way that
she feels very like she's the leader, like she enjoys being the leader. She wants to be seen as the leader, but she still wants people to kind of like her and be respected. But I also think she has like a kind of sinister smile when she really smiles. There's something kind of sinister about it. But she's a special character for sure.
Like when the scene where she kicks Daniel out of the school, basically because the dog bit Albert. I mean, when he leaves, she lets off sort of like this evil smile, almost as if she knows what's gonna happen to him, which she does. But it's so great. But also in Dictator, I mean, like the way that she treats the students, she is so rough to them. Like it's pretty great. I feel like she's a pretty great character. So Do you have any more positives that you want to talk about with Suspiria?
Yeah, now that I rewatched it for like the 100 million time, I there's a detail right at the end with that peacock lamp. Or I just realized how gorgeous it is. It really illuminates the room, and when she picks up one of the feathers, but it's not really feathers, it's like a lamp thing. It's just such a gorgeous piece. I'm like, it really just makes the whole room that detail. I really love it. And then I also just love how in Dario Argento movies you have to really focus on like the tiniest details which you don't think matters, but then it comes back, and then you're like, oh wow. So it feels kind of complicated, but it's not. It is quite simple small details that you just have to look for and think about that comes back, and that is what makes his kind of twists and turns so good, because they are not overworked. They are simple but effective.
Very much. And it's funny that you say that, because I had that with Suspiria this time, actually, when I rewatched it last night. When Sarah is basically trying to escape the school after, of course, Susie kind of gets like knocked out by the food and stuff, and she is followed by Helena Marcos, basically. There is a scene where before she goes into the room where you get the infamous barbed wire kill, of course. But there was like a shadow, and then the arm sort of grabs her. I never noticed this, honestly, until I saw it last night. But you can actually see Helena Marcos's eyes right there as well. I never noticed that before. I was like, wow, oh, that's something, And I thought the intro was the only time you saw that, but I was like, are those the eyes right there? And it's like, yeah, it was. So that just goes to prove to you that you can watch movies multiple times and see different things every time. So, yeah. And of course, we have to talk about. You mentioned it already. We have to talk about the score of the film.
Oh,
it's amazing. And at first sight, you feel like Argento has sort of gone insane by replacing Maestro Ennio Morricone that he used to work with. It's like, no one casts out Ennio Morricone. What are you doing here? What are you doing? But then you hear Goblin's score, and it's no longer insane. It's brilliant.
You just feel your heart racing, starts beating really fast, and you get excited. So I think that was definitely the right choice. I mean, Suspiria is the music. Suspiria is Goblin. So.
Yeah, exactly. Especially for this film. And it's just, and the main theme, of course, it's like and when at some point when you hear the voices of the witches throughout the theme. It's so haunting and tense, and it almost has like a sort of hypnotic quality to it, that you're sort of like drawn in, like, oh, give me more, I want more, please give me the goods, which of course taps into the whole theme about magic and stuff, just like the act of dancing seemingly also has magical effects in this film, but getting back to the music, it's just, I love this soundtrack, and I listen to this all the time. Sometimes when I'm working, I just have the soundtrack in the background just to listen to it without the visuals and stuff. It's so brilliant. It's so brilliant. Like, do you have any like soundtracks of the films, or
like a physical copy?
Yeah, or like CD or vinyl or whatever.
Not of Goblin or Dario Argento's movies, unfortunately. I don't, but I listen to them a lot on Spotify, especially Phenomena's that opera kind of music. Really.
Yeah. I'm still looking for Suspiria, actually, but it's so hard to find. It's really
I think it's kind of pricey maybe as well.
Yeah. I tried looking for it at HorrorCon actually, like a week and a half ago, something like that. But they didn't have it there. It's just very hard to find. A lot of Italian soundtracks actually. I do have some, but it's they're very hard to find. Maybe I should just go take a trip to Rome and just
maybe
visit.
to that store. Is it called
Profundo? Yeah. Maybe they have it there. So that's like a trip for one day at some point. But so yeah, its soundtrack is fantastic. So let me just ask you this: since there is so much great stuff about this film, do you have any issues or negatives with Suspiria?
I honestly haven't written down a single negative thing, but I mean, I think it's the world's best film. So, but I mean, I understand if people do have negative things. So, yeah, because it is quite a different type of film.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess you would have to be, but again, it's sort of like a product of the modern viewing people, I guess, is that they don't really have the patience anymore to watch movies. At least this is what I feel like. I see it in cinema all the time. I watched a movie like a couple of weeks ago, and all throughout the movie, people were just like texting on their iPhone. It's so frustrating. Anyway, people don't have the patience anymore. But yeah, I mean, no movie is perfect. I mean, I guess if you don't like old movies, this is not necessarily for you. Yeah. Or if you don't like movies that have very little plot in it, for me, this is a pretty much perfect movie as well, except for one little thing, which isn't very. I guess it isn't a negative. It's more like a nitpick. But I'm learning to do that differently because I usually watch the Italian versions now with the English subtitles. The dubbing is terrible.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the dubbing is not the best. So I can understand people being kind of put off by all the different types of languages they were speaking and the awful dubbing that was going on. And I mean, people were speaking different languages on the set. So people couldn't even understand each other. It was a mess. But so I can understand that for sure.
Yeah. And it's a product of, I guess, it's a product of them always shooting the movies without sound. So, they have to record the voices later, which is always a problem, but that's how they did it anyway. But that's like, if I would have to name one negative, it's the dubbing. I say that about all Italian films, but I usually watch the original version with the English subtitles now. So it doesn't really bother me anymore, but I can see why people are sometimes, frustrated by that. But really, that would be my only nitpick of this film, the dubbing. But that's about it. So do you have any more to say about Suspiria before we go into ratings? Because I do ratings on the show.
Okay. That's nice. Yeah.
So, do you have any
I think I've said everything I want to say about Suspiria. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. No, I think I have to. So we go into ratings now, of course, of Suspiria. I always ask, do you want to go first or should I?
I can go first.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm giving Suspiria, my favorite film in the world, a 10 out of 10.
All right, there you go. It's a perfect film for you. No, I can definitely see that. I can definitely see that, and it deserves that score. So I'll write that down because I keep a list of ratings.
Nice.
Yeah. So that we do, because there are more podcasts coming. So but 10 out of 10, I can definitely see that. It's fantastic. So Suspiria. This is a fantastic film. It really is. I love it. I can watch. I always look for rewatchability in films, not just horror, but in films in general. Yeah. And this movie, I can watch it over and over and over again and never get bored. Sometimes I watch it multiple times a year. This is fantastic. I'm not sure. I don't know if this is his masterpiece, honestly, because he made so many fantastic movies. It's kind of hard to choose like one masterpiece out of the whole thing, out of the whole body of work. But there is no doubt that this is a fantastic film.
Yeah.
It's so well made. It's is it style over substance? Yes, maybe it is, but that doesn't really bother me, and it's perfect for me. Let's just say that it's it's all subjective, of course, but it's perfect for me. And apart from the dubbing, I think this is a pretty much perfect film. I'm going to give it very close to yours. I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Okay,
it's
nice.
Absolutely, it's wonderful. It's absolutely fantastic. Before we go to the next one, by the way, I wanted to ask you one more question. How did you watch this film, Suspiria? Do you have a Blu-ray or?
I have multiple versions of the film. So I have a DVD version. I have a triple special DVD version, and I have a Blu-ray version.
All right.
Yeah.
And
I'm always looking for more versions.
Yeah. Well, maybe I can recommend one to you in a bit. But so, how is the picture quality on the DVD?
As far as I remember, because I watched the Blu-ray now, but on the DVD, I think it was good from what I remember. It's been a while since I saw the DVD now, so yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No. I watched it actually from, and I don't know if you own this one, but I watched it from this one actually. This is
no, that is not the one I own.
No, this is from Cult Films actually.
Okay.
It's called Cult Films, and this is basically, it's a Blu-ray, but with the 4K transfer.
Okay.
And the picture quality is fantastic. So, and it also has a DVD, by the way. So you can watch both. But I always watch the Blu-ray. Just it's but that's the version that I watched, and it looks really good. Nice. So yeah, Suspiria. All right. So shall we go into the next one then?
Yeah.
All right. So the next one, of course, is Inferno, released in 1980, I believe it was. Just a quick synopsis again. A American student investigates the disappearance of his sister and the death of a friend, both connected to New York and Rome by an old alchemy book. This synopsis is a bit more mysterious, so it keeps up the tension. So I'll throw it over to you again. So what are your general thoughts before we go into positives and negatives? What are your general thoughts on Inferno, and how do you feel about Inferno? Because this is an interesting question. How do you feel about Inferno in comparison to Suspiria?
Well, now that we know that the Suspiria movie is the first of a trilogy, and then we know that Inferno is the second one, then we kind of know, it's still about witches. So it's not as mysterious as maybe Suspiria was if you haven't read the synopsis before watching the film. But yeah, I do still think, it's of course Dario Argento's style. It's his signature in every scene. You can still feel the vibrant colors and everything. But I do think that the story is a bit more evolved. So I think he put a bit more time into the story-wise than in Suspiria. Mm-hmm. So there are some clear differences in these movies.
Yeah, totally. And that's like one of my things I'm going to talk about here. But I agree with you. It's of course it's part 2 of the trilogy. So if you've seen Suspiria, you pretty much know what's going to happen. In that instance, the surprise element isn't necessarily there. But I still feel like Inferno has a lot of really great stuff about it in its own way. I do have some issues with it, which we'll get into later on. But overall, I think this is a pretty strong sequel, actually, which which can also stand on its own. I mean, you can watch Inferno if you haven't seen Suspiria and just, get what's going on right away. You don't need like background information necessarily.
Yeah.
So let's just dive into it. Positives and negatives. Let's start with the positives again. What do you like or love about Inferno, and what what do you appreciate about this second part in the trilogy?
Yeah, well, as you said, you can watch this even if you haven't seen Suspiria, because the movie just starts off right away with a character, and she is reading this book, or she's being explained by a voice, basically what is going on, what the book is about, what these witches. So you get all the necessary information just from the first few minutes. So yeah, you don't really need to see Suspiria, but you should. But this works as a standalone film as well. So I do appreciate that. And I do kind of like that, as I said, the script feels more worked through, a bit better, just a bit more kind of exciting. Like we have a lot to work with. We have some side stories that are kind of interesting. We have a lot of interesting characters, as we did in Suspiria, but here I think we're even introduced to a few more that have more depth, so to speak. But yeah, of course, I always love the colors, and what I thought about in almost every scene, just that red and the blue are so prominent. The green isn't really as prominent in this one. It's more like red and blue, and it just kind of radiates every scene, and I do really like that. And I also love Dario Argento's. He really loves keyholes. I think it stands for keyholes. There are a lot of focuses on keyholes, whether people are watching through or just doing something. They're like gorgeous shots of keyholes. I do like that. But yeah, I do love his attentions to details like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I believe he uses the whole thing about keyholes and stuff, or keys. I believe I have to rewatch it, but I believe he used that in opera as well, I believe. Which is very interesting. So, but yeah, I agree with you. But let me just ask you this, because you are an independent filmmaker. When I talk to people who have just seen Argento films or Italian films in general, I always get the criticism. I heard this at HorrorCon, actually. I get a lot of criticism that, the scripts don't make a lot of sense. Not everything gets resolved all the time. Stuff like that. You sort of convoluted things all throughout sometimes. Let me just ask you this, as you're an independent filmmaker. Do movie scripts, do they always have to make sense 100%? And do they always have to explain everything in detail? Or can they leave certain things out there and just in terms of like your own interpretation, and sometimes things don't need explaining? How do you feel about that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I feel like it depends on what type of movie it is. So no to both questions. The script doesn't have to go into every detail, doesn't have to give you answers to everything, doesn't have to explain everything. But I do feel it depends on what type of movie it is. So it has to fit kind of the movie's style, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I do feel like a lot of American films, they do want to explain everything. They want to over-explain things.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like the audience is kind of dumb and we don't get things, so they over-explain everything. So yeah. But I do like European movies, like Italian movies, because they kind of leave things more open. They don't necessarily have to explain everything. Yeah. So I like that people can watch the same movie but have like 100 different interpretation of what film is about or what is going on. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yes. I by the way, I applauded you because you hit the nail right there. Yeah, I agree with you so much. It's like I actually I know someone who used to work in the film industry in America, and they basically said the same thing. It's like, and by the way, I love American films, like a lot of them. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah, me too.
but they feel this urgent need nowadays to sort of like you said, over explain everything. It's almost like they feel like the audience has become dumb, and it's like, for example, let me just throw in one example right there. Have you seen like the Rings of Power or not?
Rings of Power?
Yeah, the Lord of the Rings TV show.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you have watched it? The whole season?
The whole season.
Okay, there you go. So I can talk spoilers.
Yes.
Okay, otherwise it would like so. First of all, it had a lot of problems, but I really enjoyed it. But when after they basically created Mordor with the volcano and stuff, then in episode 7, you had all of a sudden you see like this the Mordor, and without like the audience can guess. But they feel the need to like put a label on it in case you didn't know that's Mordor, and it's like, what? Do you really think that I can't make up that answer for myself? Like, I'm not like, I've seen Lord of the Rings. I understand. You don't have to like throw it in my face, but that's like, that's just one example right there. But yeah, I totally agree with you. But I also agree with you on just the script and stuff like that. I feel like not everything should be explained, or it doesn't have to be. For example, with Lucio Fulci, I guess you've seen The Beyond, I guess. Yes. It's my favorite Lucio Fulci film. But that film is riddled with plot holes, and like almost nothing is resolved and stuff. But it's fine. It's fine. I can just. It's like it's a roller coaster ride. I
mean, even if a film has a lot of plot holes, nothing makes sense or whatever, it doesn't really matter. What matters is how I feel while watching the film. Do I enjoy it? Then fine. That I don't really care. So yeah.
No.
But I do appreciate also a script that is like really well written, well thought through, of course. So I mean, it all depends on the film and how it makes me feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, as long as you stick to your concept, whatever it is, as long as you stick to your own concept, then I'm fine. I can forgive a lot of things. And again, The Beyond, it's like there is like no plot, and it's like so many things that are weird, and it's like, but it's and yet I love it. So it's I can totally agree with that. So but I want to just talk about the atmosphere for a bit in this film, because I feel like because this film, like how do I say this? Like Suspiria, I feel like this breathes again so much atmosphere. It's very different than Suspiria, of course, but yet again there is again so much atmosphere here. The underwater scene at the start of the film, it is so brilliant. It's like it's so mesmerizing, and it's almost dreamlike. It's almost like you're floating in sort of outer space.
But it's still filled with tension. It's like,
exactly. Especially when like the corpse starts floating by and stuff.
It just you're like,
And again, no explanation whatsoever. But it's not needed. It's not needed.
No.
Yeah. And in contrast to the ballet school in the first one, of course, the apartment building it's set in, it's dusty, and it looks very old, from all the cobwebs and stuff, and it just feels like a piece of decaying history almost. It feels like it's like it has stood there from like the beginning of time, whatever, and it's slowly like rotting and rusting away. It's so wonderful. It's really great. So, do you like the atmosphere in this one?
Yeah, I do. I really, really like it. And I agree with what you said about the apartment building. It's almost, as if the apartment building has a life of its own, so to speak, like the ballet school did. Now it's the apartment building. And as I said, it is really dirty with the cobwebs, but still in contrast with the colors. It's just so interesting, that juxtaposition. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And of course the pipes that you hear breathing through. It's almost like the building is breathing itself. It's very eerie. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it really helps as well that a lot of this movie was actually shot in New York, with Central Park and stuff like that. So I feel like that helps as well. And of course, we forgot to mention that, but the first Suspiria was shot in Germany for most of it. But talking about this once, I want to make a little statement here. I always said it was like this. Suspiria is kind of like a psychedelic opera, almost. Inferno almost feels very much like a comic book. It feels like a graphic novel. And while and I'm sure you do, while I appreciate the movie enormously for that, I think that's a very big reason why this picture was so underrated. Because I feel like everybody wanted it to be Suspiria 2, and there's just no way that you can recreate Suspiria. So,
no, I mean, you shouldn't even try. That is why I think Dario Argento went in the direction he went with Inferno, because he knew he couldn't do a Suspiria 2 that would be as equally good. That is why he went with Inferno, and I think it's a better choice to, even though it's a part of a trilogy, to still do something on its own that can stand on its own legs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I always feel like if you're gonna do like a horror sequel, just a sequel in general, but also a horror sequel, that I feel like that movie should be able to stand on its own and have its own relevance. A sequel shouldn't have to lean on the success of the original. It should be like its own thing. So I kind of feel like people judged it for the wrong reasons, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think if the script is interesting enough, like it was in Suspiria with the three witches, with three mothers, then the sequel makes sense. It works because it can delve deeper into the stories of these witches, and it explores, the other witch in this one. We're done with the first one in Suspiria. Now we can dive deep into this one, so it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Which brings me to one of my main positives about Inferno that I love so much, and you kind of like touched on it already. I just love how this movie does such an incredible job of expanding the lore of the three mothers in general, which is something that it's very hard to do in a sequel. But Inferno delivers the goods in all of that stuff, in all those regards. We find out who actually built the houses of the three mothers in this one. We also learn that there are indeed three mothers, which was kind of hinted at in Suspiria, but not really set in stone. But in this film, it is. So we learned that. So there are three supreme mothers, and they, of course, also add things to like cats and cauldrons, like that sort of stuff, cooking cauldrons and stuff. In this picture, which is the way to go, in my opinion, because you always want to be adding to the mythology and not like retracting from it. Does that make sense? Do you agree?
I agree 100%. Like, you should build on the lore, make it more interesting, and I think the audience will appreciate that, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what you always hope, of course. Like, I hope the audience appreciates you explaining things. because again, over explaining is the wrong way to go, but they give you just enough in Inferno to make you feel interested, you know.
Yeah, they're just adding enough things and not really over explaining or focusing too much like on the story or the witch from Suspiria. They kind of mention her as well, but they then, you know, move on and adding to the lore and do their own thing.
Yeah. It doesn't go back and lean into Suspiria, but it sort of lets it stand on its own. But it also expands like the mythology, which I think is pretty great. Yeah. So of course we have to again mention the gore and the kills in this one, because it might not be as new and original as the stuff we saw in part 1, Suspiria, but I feel like Inferno still has some very great set pieces. My personal favorite is the rats in Central Park, where like the guy gets sort of like chewed up, you know, and stuff like that.
And I mean, that scene also makes me a bit angry because of the cats, you know. He has the bag, he wants to drown the cats, and then karma gets him, and the rats are coming for him. So I love that as well. Yes,
exactly. Yeah, but I'll get back to that character in a bit. But I really love that scene. But of course, also the scene with where Alida Valli again, but she's not a witch in this one.
No.
But she finds the corpse with the eyes sort of hanging out. Of course, that's great as well. Which again, those kill scenes are not really explained. Like how the hell does that happen? But
I mean, because you mentioned that shot where we see the man with the eyes. It does feel a bit out of place.
Yeah,
just that shot, it does feel a bit out of place, but somehow it's kind of, it still works. It's still just, it pops up and you're like, huh? Okay. And then it goes away and you're like, whoa, what did I just watch? And just the effects and just the way it looked. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of like I can see that. That's where it kind of goes into, I guess, comic book area, where it's like it feels very like coming from the page of like a cartoon or whatever, just the way it looks. But I mean, I don't mean that in the wrong way, but it's like
it's still very, very charming and very good. It's just very kind of surprising, and just the image differs from a lot of the other regarding of the setting, the scenery, the lighting and stuff. So I like that.
And of course the infamous death by guillotine or guillotine, is that how you pronounce it? And it's but that's kind of like interesting, because I feel like I'm a little sad that we don't actually get like a real decapitation there, which makes me think if Dario Argento might have been held back a little bit, because this film was shot in America, and I don't think we have to. Yeah, I don't think we have to go into it how Americans love their censorship. So it's I can't help but wonder if maybe the producers there kind of like stepped in. It's like, oh, you can't do this. So that's kind of like a bummer. I feel like we should have seen like a real decapitation there, but you know.
Yeah, I think so too, especially since the guillotine doesn't decapitate her at once. I mean, it comes down, it goes up again, and then comes down again, and we see that it's only like almost halfway through, and they're struggling, she's struggling, and I thought that was really interesting to kind of prolong it that way. And then I was waiting for one more time to and I felt that it kind of ended just abruptly, just right there, like 2 times, and then it just goes to black. That was a bit I felt that was too quick. That
that was exactly. It's like I wish I could see the witch's face in that moment. Like really, I can't make this work in one go. Damn you producers for making me do this like 5 times. It's like
because we do see the cool hand. So I wish but
I still like the scene. But again, I wish I wanted to see like the head come off and stuff. And that's
Yeah,
yeah.
me too.
But it's but do you have a favorite kill in this one?
Well, as I said, I do really, apart from not seeing the head coming off, I do like everything up to that point.
Right.
I do like the rats.
Yeah.
And as mentioned, that shot with the guy and with the eyes, because it was came from nowhere. But yeah, I do like all the kills in this one, but I don't think they are as memorable as the kills in Suspiria. If we take the intro, the double murder, the dog, I think Suspiria just was on another level. So to speak, with the creativity surrounding that. But maybe that is explained in, as you said, being held back by producers, by, I don't know, maybe a budget. I don't really know. A lot of things goes on set. I don't know. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Actually, we watched a documentary at HorrorCon about films from the 80s and the importance of that whole era. But it shows you, and again, I don't think a lot of modern movie audiences understand this, that making movies is damn hard. It's one of the hardest, maybe the hardest jobs in the world. Making a good movie is very hard, and a perfect movie is almost impossible. And so I imagine that it has reasons, like you mentioned, budget, or like we talked about, American producers and stuff like that. And it's the kills are not like, it's not like you don't get stuff like the barbed wire kill and stuff like that. That's a bit, so we don't get that. But I feel like with what he was able to do, there are some interesting things here, but you can definitely see that this had limitations. Yes. So I think, again, my favorite kill would probably be the rats with the, in Central Park. And we'll talk about characters right now. So I think there are some really cool characters in this one as well. They're maybe not as great as Suspiria, but again, that would be comparing. So I think Leigh McCloskey, if I pronounce his name right, is really good in the role of Mark, although I feel like Argento kind of like made a sort of safe bet by making the protagonist a male character.
Yeah, because it feels like he, this is the kind of male, or he was trying to make a male version of Susie Bannion. Mm-hmm. So we have, in the first one we have Susie Bannion. In this one here we have Mark fighting against the witches. But I have to say, with the characters, I felt that a lot of characters they popped up. We kind of got to know them, and then they got killed, and it didn't feel like it had that sort of build-up that Suspiria had, if I may compare. But yeah, it just felt a bit different with the kind of introduction of the characters, how long they were on screen, and they came and they went, so to speak.
Some characters have pretty small roles, actually, that's totally true. They're not as strong as Suspiria, but they are fun to watch, I guess.
I thought a lot of them were fun, and I thought a lot of them were like very interesting to follow. I got to know them, and then, as I said, they're gone.
They're killed off. Very frustrating. Very frustrating. Because you always want to like care about characters, before you do stuff. But I have to say, I love. I'm gonna butcher the name again, but I love Eleonora Giorgi, I guess, as Sarah. I think Sarah is pretty great. And of course, Daria Nicolodi is here as Elise, of course. But again, it's a very small role. I felt like Argento would give her a bigger part in it, but
because it feels like she just shows up. She's just there like one moment, and then now Daria is here. Okay, and she has this conversation about the building, how she could like communicate through different things with her friend, and just explaining a lot of things about the building, and she just shows up.
Yeah. She's kind of there to give Mark information, I guess. It's like sort of like, but my personal favorite character of this film is actually the one we were talking about. Is Sacha Pitoëff. I probably butchered that, but Sacha as the eccentric shop owner, Casanian, I guess, which just happens to have his store right next to the apartment building. Like, what is the chance of that? But no, I love his character. He's very enigmatic and kind of like a nasty. He's kind of like a nasty old man.
Yeah, I think he's the most memorable of them all, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And you can clearly tell that he knows certain things, but he doesn't want to like tell anyone about. I'm just going to keep my little secrets.
He's like, I know things, but I'm going to mind my own business.
Yeah. As if that's ever going to happen living besides a witch's building. But but again, like you said, with the cats, that's pretty rough. But then again, karma, like you said, he gets his comeuppance, but I think,
right away.
Yeah, right away. Yeah, right away. Yeah. When you saw the first rat or the first mouse came out, I was like,
it was also so interesting because he puts the sack with cats in the water, and then he falls in, and he's the one who's yelling, "Help me!" So I thought that was kind of hilarious.
But he's also kind of like a silly character, because if you're, I mean, with all respect, but if you're gonna drown the cats, and he tries like 3 times before he actually succeeds.
He's not very efficient.
No, not very efficient. Like, you're putting the bag in like this shallow of water. Like, I mean, stroll in, man. Like, go, if you're gonna do it. But that's kind of like, but no, I love his character. I think he's very interesting. So, do you have any other positives about Inferno, or do you want to talk about negatives?
Well, I do like the whole reveal towards the end. When the skeleton comes out and everything is just on fire. Kind of like Suspiria. Everything is on fire. The whole mansion is just, exploding, and so I do like that. I like that everything ends in chaos.
Right.
Yeah.
I like one part of it, but the other part I actually have an issue with, which I'll get back to. But I love the whole mirror and skeletal thing, and that it's basically. Although I have to say, is she really death, or is she just pretending to be death? That's kind of like out there. But I love the reveal, and I love the reveal that she's like sort of like the nurse, which takes care of it turns out the builder of the buildings. And but by the way, that's like another thing. Like, how old is that guy? If you built the houses that long ago, like, are you like 200 years old or whatever? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You kind of have to go with it, right? But I like the nurse and the reveal of that. Yeah, and it's so. Do you want to talk about some negatives? Because I do have some issues with this film, actually.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, the kills aren't as good as Suspiria. Just they are still interesting, of course, but it feels like something is just lacking a bit, not as impressionable. And some of the characters, I think they are gone a bit too fast. Would have loved to learn a bit more about them. But other than a few minor issues here and there, I still think it's a very worthy sequel that can stand on its own. But I mean, it does have its problems. Not as good as Suspiria, but I mean, there are so much worse sequels out there. So this is really, really good sequel. Yeah.
Just for me, it's always like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. You know, that's one for me anyway. Terrible, but okay. It's all subjective, of course. I mean, but yeah, I have two major issues with this one that I want to talk about real quick. I agree with what you're saying about the kills and characters and stuff. So the first thing I want to talk about is kind of like an issue is that is the soundtrack. The soundtrack just isn't. It just doesn't live up to the quality of the score in Suspiria. I feel this soundtrack is just much more generic, and I hate to say this, but a bit Americanized almost, right? And on a personal level, I just expect more from, I guess, Argento in terms of creative choices to give us a great score. I mean, how do you feel about the score? Do you agree or do you like it?
I actually agree about that. I mean, I still like the score, but it wasn't like as thrilling as the score in Suspiria, so to speak. It wasn't like up to that level, but I still enjoyed it, but maybe not as much.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I like the track that plays during the end credits, but apart from that, it's I don't know. It just, again, it feels kind of generic and Americanized. I feel like if he made it, if he would have made it in Italy, it would have been much better.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, in terms of that. So that's like one issue for me, which isn't a very big one, just something that I noticed now. But my second issue is actually a big one, and that is the ending of the film. Now, I agree, it's very reminiscent to Suspiria, and I appreciate it for that, but it feels very, to me anyway, it feels very repeat, copy, and paste in a strange way. And while I can see the charm and seduction of doing that, I'm honestly thinking, and after rewatching it last night, I'm thinking it even more. Like, fire again? Really? Really? Are we going that way again? I mean, there is more than one way to kill a witch. it's just. I mean, no offense. I mean, it's like, if you know. Yeah. No offense to like real history in like our real life and stuff, because that's terrible. But I mean, there is more than one way to kill a witch if you look at the lore, and it might not be fair of me to say this, but a lot of beats, and I can understand it because it is a sequel to Suspiria, but I feel like some beats are very reminiscent of that one, and I don't really mind, but the ending always sticks out to me. It's like you could have created something a bit more original for the ending, and yet you go back to fire yet again. That feels kind of weird to me. But it's it is what it is. It doesn't ruin the movie or whatever. I still think it's a pretty good movie, but the ending it doesn't sit very right with me. But it's but again, maybe it's a thing of the producers demanding that. It's like, well, that worked, you have to do it again. Maybe that's what it does. But yeah, those are kind of like my two big negatives with this. Maybe the first one should be more of a nitpick, but I'm a soundtrack geek. I'm always, especially with Italian cinema, they have so many fantastic soundtracks.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and this kind of falls by the wayside a bit, I feel like. So before we go into ratings, do you have any final thoughts on Inferno?
Just that it's a really worthy sequel, and a lot of problems with not just sequels but trilogies is that the middle film feels like a middle film, like just a transport road. But this doesn't. It stands on its own. The story is for that witch, completed, and I still felt satisfied. So in that sense, I think it's a really good sequel.
Right, yeah. Well, after we do ratings, I have a question about that as well for you. So, but after we do ratings, I have two more things I want to do with you here. So, yeah, I mean, we can go into ratings if you want. I think I talked about everything there is to say about Inferno. So, again, do you want to go first or should I?
I can go first.
Okay, go on.
Yeah. So for this sequel to Suspiria, for Inferno, considering everything we talked about, I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. So not as good as Suspiria, obviously, but still a good sequel.
Okay, there you go. You're very close to my rating, actually, for this one. Yeah. So, I really like Inferno. I mean, it's of course nowhere near as great as Suspiria, but I feel like that's an unfair standard because that movie is just so phenomenal and ahead of its time. It's, again, I can watch that over and over again. And I really like Inferno and I enjoy watching it very much. And it is a film that I can watch several times. I can revisit it, although not as much as Suspiria, but I really enjoy it. There are certain issues with it, but overall, I think it's a pretty solid sequel. But like you said, it sort of suffers from being the middle part of the trilogy, which you can really see when they sort of like have the Rome thing in here, of course, with the music class, right? It was the music class, yeah, where they listened to like classical music, But yeah, so it kind of suffers from that. But I think overall it's a very solid effort from Argento, and I think it's a worthy sequel. So I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. So
okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty good actually. I enjoyed more than a lot of horror sequels. So it has that going for it.
Yeah.
So let me just ask you this. Now that we are done with the movies, talking about the movies. So of course we have a third part on the of the Mother's trilogy, which we're not going to discuss in length, but just as a sort of like feedback thing. The three Mother of Tears, I believe it's called. Yeah. It didn't came out until 2007, I believe it was.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any theories about that? Why do you think it took that long for Argento to make the third part? Because it feels very out of place with these two movies.
Yeah, I mean, with the time gap, definitely feels kind of out of place. And I really don't know. I mean, they should have made it sooner, just to capitalize on everything. And but honestly, because they already established the three witches, we know there are three witches. Yeah. There are supposed to be three stories. Yes. So I mean, it was an inevitable that we would get a trilogy. So I mean, they should have made it sooner, but at least we got it.
Yeah, at least we got it. But is it really a great film? I mean,
I am in the minority probably because I think it's really good. Okay. I think so. Yeah, I really like the film. I really like the kills. I think he really.
Oh yeah.
I think the kills are actually better than in Inferno. We're talking like creativity, what we get to see, the gore-wise, the length, and just the build-up and everything. I think he really succeeded in that part. Like we get a really strong opening with that the woman who is researching, and then suddenly she dies really brutally. And so I think Dario Argento really went back to his roots in that one. But yeah, I mean, still the film kind of suffers from a lot of things, but I still really like the film. But I understand people who really don't like the film. But it is weird with the time gap for sure. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, I don't hate Mother of Tears. I don't hate it. I like it. And again, like you said, I agree. The kills are much better, and I like the atmosphere. But I always have this sort of disconnect because it feels so out of place with the other two, because it's basically set during the modern era at that time, and these two feel very 80s and 70s. So I feel like it's missing that vibe.
It
And
is.
and I don't really understand why he waited that long for it to be made. Maybe he couldn't find the right story or whatever, or I don't know. I also heard stories that he was kind of tired of the whole thing, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, if you're gonna promise 3 movies, then why would you stop like at the middle point? But okay, but I don't know. I like it, but I always feel sort of like this disconnect with it, as if it doesn't belong with the other two. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It totally makes sense. Like, it would have been amazing if we got, like, Suspiria in the 70s, Inferno in the 80s, and maybe Mother of Tears in the 90s.
The
Like,
90s.
that would have been very interesting. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a bummer, I guess, but it's and again, it's kind of like I feel like it kind of triggered the end of Argento's career as well, because after the 2000s, he didn't really make a lot of well, I wouldn't say bad, but just not as great as the stuff that came before, which is a shame. But yeah, it is what it is. But I still like it, but I don't know. It's the one I have.
It hits very differently.
Yeah,
it does. Yeah,
it is. So before we close off this stream, there is always a question or a sort of a conundrum that I want to ask my guests here.
Okay.
So, being the Argento fan that you are, like me, of course, we're speaking to the viewers, but also to the modern day audience now. All right.
Okay.
So, if you had to recommend, if people wanted to get into Dario Argento and you had to recommend one film, you could only recommend one film, then what film would you recommend to people to start in Argento's work, and what would be the movie that you recommend for them to kind of like take off?
Well, I would say Suspiria just because I started with it and it made me fall in love with Dario Argento's style. Like, I love Phenomena, but I don't know if, I mean, that is the movie you fell in love with, but I don't know if that would be like something that the audience of today, starting with like starting point of Argento, would be as appreciated, or if it would just be viewed as a bit weird and a bit, I don't know, too much with all the insects and stuff. But I mean, Phenomena is also phenomenal. So I would say Suspiria, and then maybe Bird with a Crystal Plumage, because I mean, he really shines through there with his screenwriting skills. So I would say maybe that one as well, Bird with a Crystal Plumage, because I think that was the second film I saw after Suspiria, and I think I rewatched that twice in a week. So that is how much I really like the story. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I mean, as for me, I guess, Phenomena is just too weird. So that's like, you shouldn't start there. Like a girl who talks with insects, that's like, a lot of people would find that too strange. But as much as I love and adore Suspiria, I do feel like a lot of the modern audience today would have a problem even with that. If I guess if I have to recommend one, it would probably be The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, because it's a much easier film to digest and to follow.
It's a much cleaner film also.
Yeah, and it has a much more clear narrative and the straightforward structure and the story and stuff. I feel like people can follow that a lot easier, if that makes sense. I mean, they should watch Suspiria because it's phenomenal, but I don't know if people would be able to digest it that quickly. So,
but I mean, also especially since we have the Suspiria remake. So I mean, a modern audience would probably watch the remake first, and it is such a different film from the original Suspiria.
which is a mistake, but still.
Yeah. So if they see the original Suspiria, they would probably maybe not really appreciate the original Suspiria because they are kind of expecting something like the 2018 version, and then the magic just goes lost, and so maybe Bird with Crystal Plumage is the way to go.
But on a side note, now that you mention it, have you seen the remake of Suspiria?
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you think?
I'm not a fan. Let's say that I'm not a fan.
There you go. Thank you. There you go. I thought it was. It's just. I never do this, but I actually thought about leaving the theater. Really, it's just. But I have that with most remakes. That's my problem with most remakes.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate some remakes, but I knew Suspiria remake, it would be tough. It would be, because it's my favorite film. But I was trying to see it. I pretend the original Suspiria doesn't exist. Doesn't exist anymore. This is a new film called Suspiria, but still, I was very underwhelmed. The movie was very underwhelming, in my opinion. It's in every aspect.
We don't have to go into all of that, but still, I just wanted to ask. But we are in agreement on that. So okay, so if you have to recommend a film, you would say Suspiria and Bird with the Crystal Plumage. I will probably say just Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and maybe after that Suspiria probably. But I would start with the Bird with the Crystal Plumage. Just it's a little easier to get into, I guess. But so great choices. So we talked for like an hour and a half already. So
time just flew by.
Time just flew by. So let's just. I think we talked about everything we wanted to talk about here. So let's just close off this stream. Sarah, I want to thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, of course. I mean, we had to figure out a date for it to be done, but no, it was lovely. It was great talking to a fellow Argento fan. I believe he should be recognized and appreciated much more, especially by modern day audiences. But it's like that's kind of like a long battle ahead, I feel like. But but we grew up in a different time, so I guess it's that. But no, it's been lovely to have you here. It's been great, and maybe we can do a stream somewhere in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah,
if you're up to it anyway. If you're up to it. So, all right. So before we close off the stream, I always let my guest say this. So to the people who are watching this, to the viewers, where can people find you on YouTube?
Yeah, well, you can find me everywhere on Sarah Horror, just Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Yeah, and I also have a Magic the Gathering YouTube channel called Pay the One. So if you're a fan, then check it out.
Well, there you go. That's great. So if you haven't yet, check out her channel and watch her videos, because you make really great videos. You make cool content. So
thank you so much.
You're welcome. So once again, thank you for being here and for doing this with me. It's been great, and we'll try to. I'm sure we're going to work something out in the future for a new stream as well. So. It's time to let you go, I guess. Let me just talk to the audience real quick. Thank you, everybody, for watching the stream. I hope you had a lot of fun here. If you have any comments or questions about the movies that we discussed, leave them in the comment section down below. And just give your opinion on the film. Do you like Suspiria or Inferno, or do you hate them? Also possible. I can't imagine why, but it's just we just talked like an hour and a half on how pretty great to fantastic both films are. So, that should tell you all you need to know. But leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. Again, thank you all for watching. Have a great weekend. There'll be more videos as soon as possible. I promise you. Have a great weekend. And I see everyone at some point, hopefully. And I will see you, Sarah, hopefully in the future. I'm sure we will. So again, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Sarah, for being here.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.